Hi guys, it's Charlotte here on Naughty Talkie, and today I'm going to watch episode 4 of Loki. Now, I've seen a lot of theories about episode 3, some of them saying it was maybe just all an enchantment, or part of it was an enchantment. Another saying that Loki might have snatched the time stone and reversed time to avoid being crushed by that building. I don't really believe in either of these theories. I'm not saying they can't be true, they could definitely be true. Regarding the time stone, it would definitely be a very Loki-like thing to snatch one of the time stones from the drawers at the TVA, especially since no one's paying attention to them. But I'm not sure they're going to go back to plots involving the Infinity Stones in this series. So personally, I'm not convinced. We'll see. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm not convinced. I did see a very convincing theory, though, by one of my mutuals on Twitter. At first it seemed crazy, then when I read the details, suddenly it did not seem crazy at all anymore. On the contrary, it made a lot of sense, so I'm expecting that one to turn out to be true. And the theory was that Sylvie and Loki are getting pruned at the end of this episode, and that they're going to be sent to another dimension, that people who are pruned are not actually erased from existence, they just go to a kind of other plane of reality. A bit like a dumpster of pruned things, I guess. So we'll see. That one was extremely convincing in my opinion. We'll see if it turns out to be true. Okay, so let's go. What is that planet? Oh, it's Asgard.
Swoops towards the palace.
Kaylee flaming.
Flies over, defeats the dragon.
That's so cruel.
Next case.
Oh, she's a Loki, all right. The Timekeeper's lair, or whoever is in there. They look more like statues than real people.
But if they want me to find Loki in the variant,
It's interesting that he called them Loki and the variant, because then he considers the first Loki variant the real Loki, but the other one, she's just a variant to him. Technically they're both Loki, right?
Dad, Mobius.
Or she does have information, all right, but not information you're supposed to find out.
She enchanted Sea-Twin.
sorry.
He's too nice.
Variants are out there.
Oh. Shit's about to go down. Is that Natasha? No, I'm just kidding. That was mean of me.
I'm sorry.
And so that's where I grew up. The ends of 1,000 worlds. Now,
I love this idea, it's great.
that's where I'll die.
She's been rattled by the experience.
But we don't die. We survive.
He knows that.
I mean, you did. Surround them. You're amazing.
By the way, I should have an equal amount of security. This is insulting.
You just can't help yourself.
You betrayed me. Grow up. Grow up. You know,
Grow up.
I mean, you're not really the god of mischief. Oh, here.
Oh, yes, she is. Oh, that's the story from
Conniving, craven. You did this!
about him cutting Sif's hair.
Because it was just a bit of fun.
Just like all the terrible things you've done.
You, conniving, craven, pathetic worm. You did this.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
I hope you know.
Maybe dodge it this time.
No, you hear this.
You're Loki. Earth, you're Loki. That ought to be my mantra.
I missed him in the previous episode.
I'm a narcissist.
Eh.
Cold and irritating, and she tries to hit me all the time.
Unless, of course, it benefits you and you intend to
betrayed him at some point.
It was a mean
He's really
betrayal,
hurt.
Mobius. Well, of course it was me. Pulling the strings over. And then she took me to one of her apocalypses. Coming along very nicely, thank you.
And the
Stalling for time so he can think up something.
Hunter B-15 stepped in, popped her.
He's good at lying
Might
too.
want to fire off.
Good riddance.
Yeah, you're not convincing there.
Nice try.
He's just really good at nuance. You can see when he says nice try, he kind of is rattled by that information.
You know, of all the liars in this place, and there are a great many, you're the biggest.
What we wanted to hear.
She's not a very good liar.
Yeah, but it's the truth.
I looked happy. What now?
The acting on this show, phenomenal. Yeah, the false friend is not the one you thought.
You could be whoever, whatever you want to be, even someone good. I mean, just in case anyone ever told you different.
Oh.
Maybe I had a jet ski.
Told you?
That's what happened.
Prune him.
Oh. But why not him? It's all going to shit, Ravonna. Not really, no.
It was enough to take my life from me and lead to all of this.
I don't remember.
That's awful. Mm.
At last, you've arrived before us. What do you want to do?
What is this?
Or you need your head buried?
It's brought us here.
Oh. Yes. He's got no weapon. That was quite obvious from the start. Looked like Pirates of the Caribbean Space Lizard Edition. Yeah, I knew it. The theory was right. Well done. They're giving us the answer now. All the Loki variants. Oh, it's answering so many questions at once. Was that Richard E. Grant? I did not even recognize him. Oh yeah, on the right. Jack Wheeler and Richard E. Grant. So he's not pulling the strings, probably not. And that opens the door to Kang. Well, that was an amazing episode. I think it may have been the best episode so far, and that's saying a lot because I thought the others were already amazing. Hi again, so here I am, a few hours after watching this episode, still haven't recovered. It was mind-blowing, this one, absolutely incredible. I loved it even more, I think, than episode 1, which had been my favorite so far. I also want to give a shout out to the amazing Pia on Twitter, because her incredible theory that she published yesterday after seeing the latest promo, it was actually correct. That explains in part why I may not have looked really surprised when Mobius got pruned. It was a very painful moment. But at the same time, I was not really shocked. I kind of expected it, and I knew from the moment that I saw that the theory was correct and that he was not actually really gone forever. So the writing was incredible and full of surprises, and now I understand why Tom Hiddleston said that he was totally taken by surprise when reading the script for episodes 4 and 5. Beyond that, the acting was also phenomenal in this episode. I mean, this cast is just incredible. I'd missed Owen Wilson so much in episode 3, and I still love his portrayal of Mobius. Again, it's full of nuances, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to use that word a lot because it just describes everything on this show so well. Both he and Tom Hiddleston are just so good at conveying complex emotions and sending these mixed messages. You know, when they say one thing, but you can tell that they don't really mean it or that they mean something else. For example, when Loki tries to pretend that he doesn't care about Sylvie and he starts weaving this elaborate lie, and at first you think that maybe Mobius is going to be taken in, but eventually what happens is his voice and his eyes betray him, and Mobius, of course, is an expert at spotting these things, so he sees through the lie at that moment. But it's just so well done, the way that he conveys this with his voice, and you see his eyes change. And the same is true about Mobius. Owen Wilson does the exact same thing when he replies to Loki that he does not believe him about the TVA, and he goes, "Nice try." But you can just hear in his voice that maybe there's a teeny tiny little doubt creeping in there, that he's trying to dismiss it, but actually the idea has already taken root in his mind. And the same happens during his conversation with Renslayer. He's pretending to be convinced by what she says, and she's not a very good liar compared to Loki and Mobius. But you can just feel that he's not convinced. And that thing Loki has told him is gradually eating away at his conviction that the TVA are actually the good guys in that story. Gugu Mbatha-Raw was also excellent in this episode, in which I think we can say that she turned into an outright villain. Maybe redeemable, we don't know, but she has become a villain, clearly. Any doubt that she might have been a good person who was honestly mistaken about the timekeepers is now completely erased. She knows. And yet she remained nuanced as well. You could see that she still did care about Mobius, but not enough to allow him to know the truth. She did feel something when she decided to prune him. She could not even watch, in fact. So she did it anyway, but you could see that it was painful. Wunmi Mosaku as B-15 is finally showing us all her range. She was so good at communicating how rattled B-15 had been by Sylvie's enchantment. And that scene when she discovered her past was just really heartbreaking, and she was great in that scene, I thought. And I loved the twist at the end, the fact that she was the one who came in to save the day and free Sylvie and Loki from their collars. That was amazing. I hadn't seen it coming, and it was great. Now, of course, I love Sofia Di Martino as Sylvie too. She conveys so much emotion with so little, especially in that elevator scene when we learn that she does not even know why she was brought to the TVA in the first place as a child, which is horrible. So she's been running away her entire life and she does not even know why. And then you just see her pain when Renslayer gives her this very dismissive, this horribly dismissive reply that she does not even remember why they brought Sylvie in. And also it was a pleasure to see Kaylee Fleming. She's an amazing young actress. Some of you may know her from The Walking Dead. She plays Judith Grimes on The Walking Dead. She's great. I don't know if we'll be seeing more of young Sylvie, but I thought she was amazing in that role. It was really heartbreaking, those scenes. Poor little Sylvie playing with her boat and dragon, just getting dragged away by the TVA, and her life entirely destroyed. So she just had one short scene, but it was very powerful and heartbreaking. Now, I think what I loved the most about the episode was how all these relationships that they had spent time building really paid off. Emotions really reached a climax on all sides at the same time in this episode. It was very heavy, it was very hard to watch at times. You could see that Mobius was in fact really hurt by Loki's betrayal, or what he thought was Loki's betrayal. And by this you can tell that he actually truly cares. He cares a lot. There was still a doubt about this. He was pretending not to care, saying, "I'll prune him myself if I have to," or even telling him that he didn't care and he could believe whatever he wanted, he was just using him. But clearly he was not. Clearly he was bluffing when he was pretending not to care. He did care, and he had grown attached to him. And you could see that in his anger You could just see the pain and the disappointment in his very sarcastic comments and sometimes very mean comments to Loki. You could tell that his emotions were getting in the way of his judgment because he was being quite vicious with Loki, really mean sometimes even, and you could just see this anger and this frustration and this disappointment, this massive disappointment. And for once he was not able to see when Loki was telling the truth, so maybe because he was blinded by his emotions in that regard, by his anger and feeling of betrayal. As for Loki himself, he was really in an emotional whirlwind in this episode as he realized the feeling he had developed for Sylvie and simultaneously realized that Mobius was really truly his friend and cared about him, only to immediately have him snatched away from him, and that was very, very cruel. Now, I know very well from the reactions that we got last week about Loki and Sylvie that this episode is going to be controversial. And this is just my personal take, and I don't mean to invalidate anyone's interpretation, but please, please do not reduce this to shipper wars and simplistic interpretations about something that is very complex and has many layers, really. First, to me, this episode was a wonderful tribute to the Loki-Mobius relationship just as much as to the Loki-Sylvie relationship. People are going to focus more on Loki-Sylvie because they hinted at a romantic relationship there, but really, Loki and Mobius in this episode, there was some heavy stuff. It was very, very emotional. So now regarding Loki and Sylvie, everyone has their own interpretation and is entitled to their own interpretation. So I understand that for some people, they might feel like siblings or twins because, you know, they're two versions of a person that supposedly has the same genetic inheritance. So this might be the closest comparison you can make with real life, but personally, I think to dismiss the show based on this is very unfair, or to imply that it's disgusting or anything like that. This is sci-fi, so technically, in universe, they're not siblings, they're not twins, they're variants, and variants don't exist in real life. It's also impossible in real life to fall in love with yourself, so I'm not sure we actually need to import real life concepts and kind of try to stick this onto the show. So they're similar in many ways, Sylvie and Loki, but they're also completely different in other ways. And I will actually eventually publish this video about Is Sylvie a Loki, which is a study of this precisely. Are they the same person or not? So I wouldn't say it's really fair to say that it's just one person falling in love with himself, because that's not really what it is, technically. And most of all, I don't think this is meant to be seen as a traditional couple or a romantic relationship. I don't think that's what it is about. And I find it really unfair to try and reduce these storylines to things as simplistic as romance, incest, self-cest, whatever you want. I think this is really meant to be a representation of narcissism. And I already thought that before I saw episode 4. And Mobius actually spelled it out for us in this episode when he got mad at Loki for apparently falling in love with Sylvie, but he instead insisted that what he was doing was really falling in love with himself because he's a narcissist. And also note that Sylvie does not seem to be feeling the same towards Loki, at least in my opinion. I don't know if I'm right about this, but I already felt that in episode 3 because she rejected that dagger metaphor that he made that also had a narcissistic element, because he said you can see yourself in it, it's beautiful. So there was already a very clear reference to a mirror and to narcissism. And she rejected that. She said it's a terrible metaphor. So she rejected that. I don't think she's a narcissist. She does not strike me as one. And even at the end of the episode, when Loki was about to maybe confess his love to her, she did not seem to be on the same page. So that's another important thing. So I really think reducing all this to couples and romance and ships and whether you like this couple or that couple better, or even to representations of sexuality based on human standards, it is really not doing justice to the creators of the show. Finally, for all those who are freaking out about the fact that Loki was maybe about to tell Sylvie that he loved her, or even maybe going for a kiss or something, I want to point out 2 things. One, it is probably not by chance they decided to interrupt this at exactly that time so it would not actually happen. And 2, the show has made it very clear that Loki is completely clueless about love. He says it himself, this is new to me. He doesn't understand what's going on. He has no idea what's going on inside him. So it is very possible that by the next time they meet, he will have figured things out, he will be a little more aware of what's going on, and he might actually not be in love with Sylvie. In fact, it might just be something between himself and himself, really. And Sylvie is not Loki. This is something they've been trying to explain for a while. So being in love with himself through Sylvie does not make sense. So I don't think making this couple canon, whatever that even means, is really the direction they're taking. So that's all I have to say about this controversial aspect of the show for now. I don't see anything shocking or sick in this. It's not about sex, it's not about romance, it's just another step in Loki's journey of self-discovery. And they did tell us the show was going to be about this. And they did tell us that Loki was a narcissist. Michael Waldron called him the ultimate narcissist in a recent interview. So there's nothing really surprising about that, in my opinion. Now, the one thing I'm concerned about is whether or not we will get a proper representation of Loki's gender fluidity. I was right about Jamie Alexander appearing in the series, but I was wrong about her role. She simply appeared as Lady Sif, not very surprising, in fact. So my theory that she might have been cast to represent Loki's female presenting form has just been thrown out the window. Still, they did mention that our Loki variant, the main Loki variant that we're following, was fluid, that his sex was fluid. So they did not say gender, they said sex, but that was mentioned in his TVA file, and it was the TVA file of this Loki variant. So I'm wondering if we can still hope maybe for this aspect to be treated in the next 2 episodes. It might not be Sylvie that was meant to represent that aspect of Loki's personality and identity. I would be surprised and a little disappointed if they had teased this and did not deliver at all. I know a lot of people would be very, very disappointed with this. So I hope Sylvie is not meant to be the only representation of that, because she's not a very good representation of that, in fact. At least that's what I feel. One more thing, we found out that Richard E. Grant is indeed old Loki, or classic comic Loki. He had this ridiculous costume. That's exactly the kind of costume that old or classic Loki wears in the comics. So I'm very happy about this, because I thought he was too perfect for the role to play anything else. But we also found out that he is among all these variants that have been pruned, together with Kid Loki and a number of other Loki variants that we know nothing about. So this is exciting. This means we're probably going to get to see lots of Loki variants. Maybe Jotun Loki, that would be great. But it also means that it's not classic Loki pulling the strings, because that was a good theory that could have been true, that it was actually a Loki that was controlling the TVA, a more evil version of Loki, but apparently it's not the case. So I guess now the Kang theories are going to come back even stronger, because we know that the Timekeepers are a scam. We know that there's probably not a Loki behind all this. And with Ravonna Renslayer as his accomplice, he seems the obvious candidate for this. So we'll see in episode 5 if they tell us more about who is behind this facade of the Timekeepers. And I can't wait to see all the Loki variants that they're going to find in that alternate dimension. See you next week. Bye bye.